Many organizations are diversified. What does that mean? It means that they're in multiple lines of business. A couple of classic examples of diversified organizations would be, let's say, the Disney company, which makes both films and theme parks, is in a wide range of other businesses too, owns hotels and runs retail stores, for example, owns sports teams. Each one of these business units has a profit and loss statement that is independent of the others. In other words, the Disney company is in a range of different business units that each operate in their own industry structure, right? Another example of a diversified organization would be the Government of Ontario. The Government of Ontario runs the police departments, it runs security agencies, it has ministries of health, education, energy, and finance, and so on. And it also runs a range of other activities associated with business development, licensing, the whole gamut of things, okay? The goal for the project is to pick a single line of business, to focus on only one business unit in a diversified organization. So what is the criteria for what constitutes a business unit? Basically, the business unit has to generate revenue and costs on its own. It has to attract in financing in terms of revenue, it has to sell something, and it has to incur costs on its own and have choice over which costs to incur in order to support that revenue. This is a pretty straightforward criteria for the Disney company. You know, basically you're looking at the film division. The film division makes money by, licensing these films for television and selling them to theaters and so on. It incurs costs to develop and produce the movies. Those are matched revenues and costs that are pretty easy to kind of identify. But what about the Government of Ontario? What you want to do is try to identify a business unit that has to compete somehow to draw in revenue. So let's imagine that we were looking, for example, at the, division of motor vehicles, the division that issues us our driver's licenses. Well, what exactly are the revenues to that division? I would imagine that they're twofold. One of them is the fees that we pay for our driver's licenses, and we do have some discretion over whether we pay those fees. We can choose not to get driver's licenses. The other is budgetary dollars that come from the Ontario government, and the Division for Motor Vehicles is going to have to compete with other Ontario institutions to try to get written up in the budget in a way that will provide it with more revenue. So two sources of revenue for that independent business unit. Of course, there are costs as well. The Registry of Motor Vehicles in Ontario is going to have to pay employees, it's going to have to buy computing equipment and so on, and that would constitute the cost base. Either way, what you're trying to do is find a relatively narrowly defined business unit within the diversified organization, going down 2 levels on the chart behind me here, so that you have a pretty narrow sense of exactly what the business model is, and you can figure out, okay, what are the sources of revenue, what are the sources of costs, so that you can understand how the organization develops competitive advantage. That's the key to this, is going narrow so that you can really understand the business model. Good luck.